Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Craft beer is growing exponentially in South Dakota, and there's a greater variety of beer, both made in the state and distributed here from elsewhere than ever before. Jeff Alworth is a beer writer from Portland, Oregon. He writes for All About Beer magazine, is a beer blogger, and has written 2 books, including The Beer Bible. His 3rd book comes out next year. Alworth, recently in Brookings for the South Dakota Festival of Books. I had a chance to talk with him about the state of craft beer in general and here in South Dakota. Nationally, there have been some concerns as the growth of craft beer is slowing a bit, and the giants have been buying up some significant craft breweries.
This year, for the first time, growth has really slowed. So craft beer growth is up still over 2015, but we're used to double-digit growth, and I think it's like 4% or something like that. And the very biggest breweries many of them are getting purchased by the biggest craft breweries, I should say, are getting purchased by multinationals. So that causes some ennui, definitely. But, any market is going to have these kind of pressures. So I think the thing is that the period leading up to this was the kind of honeymoon phase where we, didn't have the pressures of regular competition because things were growing so fast, and we didn't have to worry about big international players because the craft breweries were too small to be noticed. But once you get to a certain size, you're going to attract attention and real competition, and I think that's where we are now.
And the number of craft brewers continues to rise steadily still. In part, that's because the brew pub model is working well.
Yeah, the brew pub is absolutely a safe model. And it's a safe model even in Portland, Oregon, where we have, 70 breweries. And the reason is because you can appeal to your local neighborhood and you don't have to sell a ton of beer. You can actually brew beer on a scale where you're only trying to service one neighborhood. And if you do that and you have made sensible investments and are not over-leveraged, there's really no reason why that will not be successful. I mean, people worry about the number of breweries in the United States. If we had 10,000 more brew pubs, they would make very little beer collectively compared to the beer produced in the United States. And yet, there's no reason to think that most of them wouldn't be successful.
Turning to the craft beer scene here, Alworth says South Dakota has a long way to grow.
I was looking at the stats, and collectively, the breweries in South Dakota in 2015 made less beer than Double Mountain Brewing in Oregon, which is a brewery no one in South Dakota will ever have heard of because it would be too small. It's like our 15th biggest brewery. So our 15th biggest brewery brewed more beer than all of South Dakota did last year.
That also means there's plenty of room for future growth.
You could also say there's no reason to think that South Dakota is going to suffer any of the pressure that you're seeing nationally. You have a wide vista to grow. You could grow for the next 20 years. You could start triple digits and go for 5 years and then be well into the double digits for the next 10 and still grow like a weed.
Seth Cook of Woodlegs Brewing in Brookings says there's already been amazing growth and there is room for lots more, especially if more South Dakotans will give craft beer a try.
We've been open 3.5 years, and I still get a large number of people that come in here for the first time, and this is not just the first brewery they've been into, standalone. This is the first place they've ever been to that doesn't serve one of the beers that you see advertised during the Super Bowl. And we still have a number of people that say, well, I'd like whatever, insert light beer name here. And I said, well, we have these other options, these other alternatives. And they will say, you don't have the light beer? And it's like, well, and I'll give you my story. Here's why. Because I've got Crow Peak's Cream Ale. We've got our Cream Ale. We've got stuff from Brow Brothers, like the old 56. These are all fantastic beers. They may not have the blue label that you're used to, but they're really good. And we still see a large number of people that this is their first experience for that. And I hope it is good, and I think most of them enjoy it. But just the sheer magnitude of people that have been unexposed to craft beer in South Dakota is still quite large.
When Beer Untapped continues in a moment, we'll hear more from Jeff Alworth, specifically on the one thing South Dakota can do to help spur growth in the craft beer industry.
Oh, when I'm lonely, I drink a fancy beer. Fancy beer.
Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller as we talk with beer writer, blogger, and author of the Beer Bible, Jeff Alworth. He says there's one thing the state of South Dakota can do to give the craft beer industry a big kickstart, and that would be allowing small brewers to distribute some of their own beer.
It's super valuable when you have a little brewery because the way distribution works is you have the distributor who takes the beer from your brewery to retailers. So let's say you're taking a keg. You sell the keg to the distributor, and then the distributor takes that same keg and sells it to a retailer. In self-distribution, you are able to cut out that middle guy, and if you're willing to take that keg in your truck over to the neighborhood pub, you get the wholesaler price. So you don't have to share that out, which means the profits are bigger, which means you can start to grow a little faster because you can scale up and grow and grow and grow. If you don't have that, it's really hard because you don't have the money to invest to have a big production facility. So then you're making these tiny amounts, but you can't grow because you can't make enough money, and it's this kind of downward spiral. So it's very hard. So yes, self-distribution is a massive benefit. And I think one of the main reasons Oregon has so many successful breweries is that they start out small and they grow.
Seth Cook at Wooden Lakes Brewing says they don't want to distribute a large amount of beer themselves, but it would be nice for them to be able to sell their beer directly in town.
In some cases, the distributors aren't in the same town, so they are required by law to take a keg from a manufacturer and sign off that it is delivered to their warehouse or their control point, and then sign off again when it leaves. And there's an entire paper trail that is developed. If we're doing a festival coming up for the Fiberfest, Fiberfest, coming up this weekend. And, we have to sell kegs to our distributor, and they do a good job moving them around for us. But by law, they're required to take it down to Sioux Falls, have it rest on their dock, and make sure that all the paperwork is signed before they put it back in their vehicle to bring it back to the liquor store, who's going to then sell it to the Fiberfest up at the South Dakota Ag Heritage Museum.
That system adds costs, obviously makes it tough for Seth to provide beer to restaurants and bars right here in Brookings. Cook says distributors make a lot of sense and they would always want to have one, but they should be able to distribute at least a small amount of their own beer.
I want to grow this brewery, but I don't want to grow it by adding big F-350 diesel trucks and drivers. I mean, that's not how I think I can do well at. I want to make more beer. I want to put more beer in the hands of customers. I want to put more beer in the hands of customers that are in Brookings. But it's been a real hurdle to bring beers inside the 57006 zip code.
Still, craft beer is growing rapidly in the state. That should continue. The number of breweries in South Dakota could easily double to 30 or more in the next few years. And in the country as a whole, there may be issues, but Jeff Alworth says it's a great time to be a fan of good American beer.
Absolutely the best place in the world. And when I first started writing about beer 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of boasting about naive Americans about how great we were. And Europeans would really laugh at us. Now they don't laugh. Now they agree. This year alone, I have hosted 4 Europeans who come to the United States to come to Portland to see what we've got going on. Everybody knows that the United States is where it's at. We have the most interesting, vibrant, innovative, and active beer scene in the world.
That's it for this week's show. Couple of event reminders. Fiberfest at the South Dakota Ag Heritage Museum this Saturday at 5 p.m., combining South Dakota craft beer and the fiber arts. And Oktoberfest at Wooden Legs the evening of October 15th. Don't miss that. Until next time, drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.